All right, moving on. Next section from Uncle Tom's Cabin. This is from pages 116 to 118 of the book. "Was that?" said the old gentleman, observing some of the company formed in a group around a large handbill. "Slave advertised," said one of the company, briefly. Mr. Wilson, for that was the old gentleman's name, rose up, and after carefully adjusting his valise and umbrella, proceeded deliberately to take out his spectacles and fix them on his nose. And this operation being performed read as follows. "Ran away from the subscriber, my mulatto boy, George. Said George 6 feet in height, a very light mulatto, brown curly hair, is very intelligent, speaks handsomely, can read and write, will probably try to pass for a white man, is deeply scarred, and on his back and shoulders has been branded in his right hand with the letter H. I will give $400 for him alive, and the same sum for satisfactory proof that he's been killed." The old gentleman read this advertisement from end to end in a low voice, as if he were studying it. The long-legged veteran, who had been besieging the fire iron, as before related, now took down his cumbrous length, and rearing aloft his tall form, walked up to the advertisement, and very deliberately spit a full discharge of tobacco juice on it. "There's my mind upon that," said he briefly, and sat down again. "Why now, stranger, what's that for?" said mine host. "I'd do it all the same of that to the writer of that 'ere paper, if he was here," said the long man, coolly resuming his old employment of cutting tobacco. "Any man that owns a boy like that, and can't find any better way of treating him, deserves to lose him. Such papers as these is a shame to Kentucky. That's my mind right out, if anybody wants to know." "Well, now, that's a fact," said mine host, as he made an entry in his book. "I got a gang of boys, sir," said the long man, resuming his attack on the fire irons, "and I just tells 'em, 'Boys,' says I, 'run now, dig, put, just when you want to. I never shall come to look after you.' That's the way I keep mine. Let 'em know they're free to run at any time, and it just breaks up their wanting to. More'n all, I got free papers for 'em all recorded in case I gets keeled up any of these times, and they know it. And I tell you, stranger, they ain't a feller in our parts get more out of his slaves than I do. Why, my boys have been to Cincinnati with $500 worth of colts, and brought me back the money all straight, time and again. Stands to reason they should. Treat 'em like dogs, and you'll have dogs' works and dogs' actions. Treat 'em like men, you'll have men's works." And the honest drover, in his warmth, endorsed his moral sentiment by firing a perfect foi de joie at the fireplace. "I think you're altogether right, friend," said Mr. Wilson. "And this boy described here is a fine fellow. No mistake about that. He worked for me some half-dozen years in my bagging factory. He's my best hand, sir. He's an ingenious fellow, too. He invented a machine for the cleaning of hemp, a really valuable affair. It's gone into use in several factories. His master holds the patent of it." "I warrant ye," said the drover. "Holds it and makes money out of it, then turns round and brands the boy on his right hand. If I had a fair chance, I'd mark him, I reckon, so he'd carry it one while." Okay, so this selection, they're talking about George. He's the runaway slave that's being advertised. And so there are a few things that you can pull out of this. If you are someone who wants to do runaway slaves as your project, this gives you a sense of the fact that when slaves ran away, they were advertised for. Ads were put into newspapers searching for them, sometimes with rewards, alive or dead. If the slave is being if the master is giving a reward for the return of their slave dead, clearly they don't really care about the return of the property, if that makes sense. In some cases, when slave owners would punish slaves, they would do it in a very visible, public way, so that other slaves would see the punishment, and that would deter them from doing the same thing. So if George is a runaway and he gets returned to his master but dead, then the master can use that as a message to send to his other slaves. This is what's going to happen to you if you do the same thing that George did, right? The branding, just to make sure that we're clear on what branding means, right? You brand horses, you brand cattle, right? And it's basically putting an iron in the fire, and you would like put the hot iron on his hand, and it would brand the letter into the hand. Usually it would be a letter relating to like the master's last name or something, ending in an H. In this case, some runaways were branded to show that they were prone to run away. This is another, it's like a way of communicating to future owners, right? If you end up selling your slave, a future owner would know, oh, look at that. He's got whip marks on his back. He's been branded. This guy causes trouble, and it could lower the value actually of the slave. see here. The other thing that they talked about was the invention of cleaning hemp, right? The machine for cleaning hemp that George had, and it says that his master owns the patent. So George invented it, but because he's a slave, he doesn't have any rights to own anything. And that means that his master owns the rights to that intellectual property, right? That invention. And so anyone that buys that invention, because his master owns the patent, he gets money from that every single time. So it's just another way that slaves were treated as less than human.